learn the language of revenue. I think it just continues to be something that I didn't know and I see other people don't know. And we're looking at 2022 and we have layoffs and all this stuff happening. And I think it's because people don't truly understand the heart of how revenue operates in a business and their business particularly. So investing a lot in learning how revenue is generated and comes and goes. I will tell this to anyone. I think of anything, if you're a business owner, the biggest liability is a financial liability. And so understanding how money works like is critical, no matter what you're selling, what you're doing, and how you're doing it.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Nicole Pereira, and that's as close as I'm going to get to pronouncing it. But Nicole started out in high school building websites and learning about SEO, or search engine optimization. Went to college and got a degree in, I think, Latin American studies, and also did some consulting on the side. And then started out after school building a few mommy blogger sites. And then went to work for a newspaper to build their website and do some digital marketing. From there, did some additional consulting jobs on the side to do digital marketing. Built a business with the employees where she worked part-time initially, and then did it full-time, and has turned her side hustle into a full-time hustle. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, Nicole.
How do you put 25 years into like 30 seconds? I guess you did it.
I guess it's just a talent that I have. So no, but yeah, so I condensed a much longer journey into the 30-second version of it. So why don't we unpack that a bit? So tell us a little bit about how your journey got started in high school building websites.
Yeah, I got the internet when I was 11, and it was like my world just opened up for me, the ability to talk to people who weren't right next to you or weren't on a telephone, right? Like just a totally different way of communicating. And so I quickly got into Lycos and Angel Fire and all those web-ish builders. Back then, though, when you launched something on that, you were full-blown web developer, HTML, CSS, and then going into Dreamweaver. So if anybody's listening from my era, this is probably going to be like sweet, sweet memories, I think.
Right.
So, and it's interesting because I remember it's funny how people these days meet people online and get married and have relationships, and people work for companies and they've never met their employers in person. Back in 2004, while I was studying abroad in Brazil, my today spouse, found one of my websites because I was ranking well on Yahoo. Found my website, reached out, filled out my guest book. We met while I was studying abroad in a different country, and he came back with me. So, I've been the internet and the web has been influencing my life professionally, personally for a very, very long time. And that's a weird intersection between the two right there.
No, definitely is sounds like a fun journey. So now let's go back to just a little bit, because I did have one question, which is, in one sense, I if you're to look at today's day and age, it's probably less abnormal for high school students to be building websites or doing online sales, because it's tools are a lot better. You can do a lot more with them. You can do drop shipping, or it's a lot more. But back in when you started, building websites probably was maybe, and excuse my naivete, but less common to do in high school, because it required a lot more studying and understanding and how to build, and a lot more programming, and it's a lot more akin to software programming than it is maybe today. And so how did you get into that in high school, and kind of what made you decide, hey, I'm going to build websites and learn about SEO?
It's interesting because I started off just wanting to put a page of myself up before social media existed. I think just kids want to like publish themselves. Now it's like common and prolific, but back then it wasn't. And so I wanted a place where people that I was meeting online could go to find more information about me, not just a screen name, not just the 30-minute conversation. Like, could we have a connection beyond this one moment in a chat room, And that's where it started. And then other people wanted their own pages. And then, new businesses were like, oh, could you make me a page? I'll give you $100. I'm like, oh, $100 in the 90s, for a 16-year-old kid is like so much money. So it was easy for me. I always thought it was so interesting how difficult like the concept was for people. And it was weird because here I am, this young girl, and everyone I was learning from were like men in their 40s. It was very interesting, the dynamic where I was very novel. So not
Mm.
only was this a novel technology, a novel way of communicating and representing your business or yourself, but like I was just a weird element in that mix too.
No, and that sounds like definitely a fun way to get started into it. And I said it's one where it's become the norm of, hey, everybody has their Facebook or their. I'm sure I'm old school and I don't even use Facebook that much, but all the different social media and their platforms and TikTok or whichever one is the more popular one. But back in the day, it sounds like it was a fun way to kind of to get online and or make that initial entrance. Now, once you graduated from high school, I think that you went off to college and got a degree in Latin American studies. Is that right?
I did. It was actually an international business degree to start. That's why I studied abroad in Brazil. I picked Latin America as my region. I picked Portuguese as my language, so it sort of centered me there. I just kept failing all the business classes. So for me, there was a disconnect in my mind, right? What I was doing in high school, the consulting I was doing on the side, examples from my parents. Entrepreneurship was business. Like those, when I thought of business, I thought of entrepreneurial business. But when they were teaching me business in college, it was to be like a manager in a very large corporate organization. And I just had this like disconnect. Like, we're not speaking the same language. I came here to pursue how to run a business. And they're like, yeah, we're going to teach you how to run the department here at this business. And you're going to do a presentation to your executive leadership. And it just didn't connect for me. And so I kept failing all those classes and ultimately ended up just taking whatever conciliatory degree I could grab from the classes I did take and just trying to graduate. And so that's why I have this very expensive degree that I will do nothing with ever in my life, but I graduated. So
Probably the plight of many college students, and you have
yep.
plenty of good company. So with that, you got a degree that was in completely far field from what you're doing today, but hopefully was still at least a bit fun to study. But you're coming out of school, and kind of where did you go after coming out of school with the degree and with the background in building websites? And kind of, I think you mentioned you kind of got into building websites for mommy bloggers, or kind of how did you get going there?
Well, I built my own mommy blog that ranked really, really well for a lot of key terms. I was a scrapbooker. So I did handcrafts and mixed material handcrafts. And then I launched an OS commerce, e-commerce site on top of my PHP based blog, and learned a little bit of PHP and learned how to sell online. And then, and then I launched an affiliate program and learned how to market to people who wanted to resell what I had about 200 other moms reselling my stuff, because it's interesting, the conversation today around time equity and flexibility and accessibility in the workplace for people like mothers. I didn't have that. So I just built a mechanism to make an income that worked for me. I had two little babies at home. And it's interesting because most of my affiliates were also mothers going, oh my gosh, you're going to give me a mechanism to make an income while sitting at home. And so I had all these little affiliates. And I just didn't realize what I was doing was so novel, so different, because I ended up getting my first corporate job, not because of my degree, not because of past jobs, but because of this self-taught endeavor. They're like, you're ranking page one for all this stuff. You're running all this revenue through this engine. You've done multiple technology projects on the web. They're like, we can't even find people out of school with development backgrounds who know how to do what you've done. Come on over. And so all of a sudden, all this I taught myself was validated, because a company wanted to pay me to come and work full time from what I had just been, I felt dabbling in for a handful of years.
Makes sense. So you really were there, you built the business up, and then, so how did you shut down that business? Did you kind of keep it going as with the mommy blogger and do both at the same time, or kind of, as you have the opportunity to come up, say, hey, we got a great background, we get a good position for you. How did you kind of transition there?
Yeah, so slowly I let it kind of die out because it was a like a laborious job. Like I had to make all these things on top of being a digital marketer, business owner, developer, design, all those things. And so when an opportunity to make an income was less effort in theory came along, I and my kids were older, so the timing was getting a little bit right there for me. I took it, and it was really awesome because it's funny if we're going to add more speed bumps to my journey, if anybody loves a good story, but I ended up getting laid off 9 months later because it was 2009. And the economy was tanking back then. So I was there for 8 months. But what was interesting was 8 or 9 months in, I had actually already accomplished so much. I launched a multi-million-dollar revamp of the newspaper's online ad systems for real estate. I launched a total redesign and redevelopment of the process and software with the part-time hours of an extra developer that they had in Django, to do virtual tours for these real estate agents that were then listing, which took something that was like losing the money every day to like 30% profitable off of it, like by the end of that period of time. And so I just found myself like jumping into technology projects that intersect with the web and marketing and all that stuff over and over again at this company because no one else knew how to do it. Like
Mm.
either they were a developer and they were all the way at this side of the fence, or they were a designer, they were all over here. No one was like project managing in the middle. What's the business objective? What are we trying to accomplish? What is our deadlines? And so I became this like marketing minded technical project manager for all these huge multi, and I had to have been 27 years old at the time. Like it was just kind of silly how much power they gave me, but it also showed me this skill set is hugely valuable. Like my age didn't matter. It was my knowledge that mattered. My gender didn't matter. It was my knowledge that mattered. And
Mm.
so I continued down the path of technology and marketing in that intersection for pretty much the rest of my career now.
No, it makes perfect sense. Now, I think that I can't remember. You'll have to fill it in. I think you also started doing some consulting jobs on the side and for digital marketing. Was that at the same time you were working for the newspaper, or did you kind of transition away from the newspaper and kind of started the next phase, or kind of how did those two go together?
Yeah, consulting kind of was always a thread. Like it was always there in the background, like all the way since high school. I was doing some form of part-time consulting that kept me honest and up to date and sharpening my skills and being in demand. And so that thread never stopped until I eventually launched my own agency. It's consulting transformed right
Mm.
into an agency. And even at that point, when I had the agency, I was still working full time at a full time job. And my agency had my business partners and several employees in an office with a lease, with customer, everything. The whole infrastructure was there, and I was still working full time, and then nights and weekends giving it to my agency. So there was this intersection, right, of the growth of consulting into a business, and then a transition I had, official decision I had to make. Am I truly an entrepreneur full time, or not?
So was there, because a lot of, or sometimes there is, and sometimes it's a natural transition, and you're just saying, hey, I've been doing this on the side and it's going well enough, I want to do it full time. And other times, whether it's, hey, I have something that jars me, in my life, I get fired, or the business is going a different direction, or I don't like who I'm working with. And so kind of what was the genesis for saying, okay, I've been doing this kind of part-time as a side hustle, but now I'm going to try and make this a full-time gig?
No, that's a very good question. I think there was a pivotal event. I was very lucky that I guess the combination of my acumen and the needs of a business, every job I jumped to, I did the same thing. I solved huge problems, I managed big budgets, and I was very effective. And so it gave me a lot of power. I also was empowered to do what I knew I needed to do best to solve the problems. And I landed at my last job working for someone else other than myself. And I loved it. And I loved my boss and I loved almost everything about it. I was given the full power to manage all the MarTech. I was doing something called RevOps before it was really understood. I was doing processes and systems and people and technical marketing and sales alignment and retention and all the things back then.
Mm.
And I was a part of why they got acquired by a multi-billion-dollar organization. And once that happened, and it took 3 weeks for me to get a blog post approved through legal, I was like, I can't live in this environment. My skill and talent is my strategy paired with my agility. I can roll things out really, really, really fast and make an impact. And when you take away my ability to do that, I just feel very stuck. I'm not built for that environment. I'm entrepreneurial. So I found entrepreneurial opportunities in larger companies that gave me freedom. So once that freedom was lost, I had to take a moment and think, do I jump into yet another job, or do I look at my business here with I think I had 4 employees and my 2 business partners, like over there full time, like, do I now commit? Do I now go over there full time? And it was truly a gift from my employer at the time, who saw my struggles, saw my frustrations, and we were able to come up with an agreement where he would transition to a client, because he said, but you built this whole system, you ran it, you have all the legacy knowledge, you could run this in your sleep, just be available, keep it running, go work for your company, I will be your client now. And so this wonderful employer who has given me much more than I deserve, I think, in life, was not only him selling his company, forced me to make a decision, but he also was a funding mechanism to push me over to the other side. Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, side hustle related entrepreneurs, have that fear. How do I get rid of the stability for the instability? Even if the instability has some really high highs, it's the low lows that scare us. And so I had just a instrumental individual in my life that made that transition as soft as possible for me.
That's awesome. And no, and I think that, sometimes I think it's a false sense of stability, in the sense that often you find out, hey, the business really isn't any more stable. I just don't have the inside knowledge to know if they're doing well or making a profit, or they're going out of business next week. And so, at least for me, it's always a kind of a comfort to at least be in control and say, hey, do or live or die, or however it goes, I'm in control and make the decisions, and I have to live with them. And sometimes you have to live with mistakes. But so I think that's always sometimes a bit of a myth, but it's often one that gives you a lot of comfort when you're or when you don't have to worry about it. So, but it sounds like, okay, so you decided, hey, gonna make the leap, make the transition, try it out, and it sounds like it's been a go of it. So now, as you jumped over, made the leap, how did it start out? Did it just take off and you had more clients you knew what to do with and more money than you knew what to do with? Or was it one where it was a slow build, or one where it went bankrupt and it's no longer in existence? Or kind of how did it go as you jumped over and made that part of the journey?
Yeah, my first agency, I think it was successful. I think it was a slow grind, lots to learn, lots of mistakes, lots of bad choices, and now I'm reaping the benefits of that knowledge. I parted ways with my partners back in 2018 and launched a new business, and this new agency business that I own has definitely reaped all the rewards of all the hard knocks it took for me to get here. When you can start something new from scratch, it's just way easier than trying to form an already existing engine. So changing things in the past gets more difficult than starting net new sometimes. And so when I started the new business, it was a different mindset, less fear. I knew I could do this. I've done it before. I had systems, I had processes, I knew margins, I could speak the language of business. What was difficult before, to your point, is even with those many, many years where I was working full-time and part-time, I still don't think I understood the language of business, right? Like, how are we really making money? What is, accrual versus cash? Like, how does this all work? And so at the end, when I left, I knew all this. And so coming in, I could start this new business like really strong. And so year one, I made more money than I did the entire 7 years of my previous business. I obviously didn't have 2 partners to split the costs with, but I also didn't have 2 partners to split the work with. I did all the work, but it was just amazing to see that everything I've learned and all the trials and struggles I went through could equal income when done right, right? Like it amplified my income earning potential.
No, I think that definitely, and it is that it is bittersweet. It is very nice to, hey, if I make the money, if I do the work and I earn it, then you get to keep it. And usually it's, financially beneficial. It's also sometimes scary because you don't have anybody else to rely on or bounce ideas off of, or if they're not necessarily there to help you. And so you have to kind of, hey, I'm going it on my own, but it's going to be worth it. And so it is always kind of that fun reward. And some people love it and it's exhilarating and you enjoy it. And other people say, no, I miss the camaraderie and I miss someone else that is having to deal with all that. So we're glad it worked out well. So kind of now catch us up to the present day. Where are things at? What are you guys doing, and kind of what's in store in the future for you?
Yeah, you're catching me on sort of like a next growth in my own entrepreneurial journey, where I have my agency. It's my main hustle. It's stable, 15 employees, different layers of management, good margins, processes and systems in place. Like I couldn't have asked for anything better. Do we have our ups and downs? Yes, 2022. Whew, this year is wild, but now I'm exploring launching a new brand to consult some thought leadership. I've sort of built a following, and so now I'm containing that in a net new brand. I'm launching a product, so we're getting an app launched. I'm now getting to venture in different types of entrepreneurship. But what's nice is I've now made my main hustle my funding arm. So my main hustle's income keeps me stable, keeps me paid, keeps everyone happy. And then I can use my extra time or some extra funding from that to do R&D, launch new things. So I'm now becoming a self-funded launcher of new businesses. And that's exciting because I could take this revenue and invest in other businesses for sure. I could put it in the stock market, I could buy real estate, but for now I'm choosing to launch net new brands that might
Mm.
have equity. I feel like in the last 4 years of this agency, I've had an astronomical amount of success compared to the past 20 years before that. So I go, I think I could do it again. Can I now launch new things with new markets that I could enter, and they might stay connected and support
Mm.
each other, or they might break out and be their own thing. But I don't know what the term is, but like multi-business entrepreneurship at the same time. Serial entrepreneurs, I often see are like one business and then they hop to the next business and it's like linear. But I'm exploring multiple things at the same time, multiple identities, entrepreneurial identities at the same time. Scary, exciting, weird. It's a new challenge for me to learn, but I think it's quite fun.
Hey, I think that's definitely sounds like a fun next phase to a lot of your journey, and to have a lot of great things in store. So definitely excited to see how it goes for you. So, well, now as we've reached kind of the present day of your journey and even looking a bit into the future, always a great time to transition to the two questions I always ask at the end of each journey. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I always ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
The worst business decision I made was to put someone else in charge of sort of managing our finances. Back in 2016, we uncovered a huge embezzlement that spanned almost $800,000 worth of total liability,
Mm.
and an individual that ended up getting sent to federal prison. And it was due to our like lack of knowledge of how money's made, how money moves, how we pay for things, right? Taxes, and understanding things like our accounting system, and just having a close eye on it. I think the best advice I got from someone else in that period of time was you never have one person control all of your money flow. So the person who controls things in doesn't control things out. And then you have checks and balances and layers of permission, and it just gives you more eyes. It doesn't mean you fear putting people in charge of your money, but you just build an engine that's a little bit more responsible. And so I think learning revenue and how it moves and having a closer eye, and basically I do all of our bookkeeping now. I have full view. I'm our CFO. I do all our forecasting because of that moment, right? I got a $800,000 PhD in how to make money and how to manage money. And it was a costly mistake, but I do think it was pivotal in a lot of my success today.
Definitely not necessarily a fun mistake to learn from, but a good one to learn from. And sounds like it set you up to know or to be more prepared for the next business. So that's great to hear. Second question is, now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Learn the language of revenue. I think it just continues to be something that I didn't know and I see other people don't know. And we're looking at 2022 and we have layoffs and all this stuff happening. And I think it's because people don't truly understand the heart of how revenue operates in a business and their business particularly. So investing a lot in learning how revenue is generated and comes and goes. I will tell this to anyone. I think of anything, if you're a business owner, the biggest liability is a financial liability. And so understanding how money works is critical, no matter what you're selling, what you're doing, and how you're doing it.
Now, it's also probably the least favorite for a lot of people, just because, hey, I didn't get into business because I didn't want to do all of the taxes and I didn't want to do all of the payroll. And that's not usually the fun part. And I'm probably in that camp to a degree, but I do think you need to work to understand it and otherwise get it in place, because I think that will oftentimes have a greater impact on your business than a lot of the other things, even if it's not the most fun and exciting. It's not like building something new or showing something off or acquiring it, but I think it definitely can be impactful. So I think that's definitely a great piece of advice. So well, with that, now as we wrap up this episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
I'm very active on LinkedIn. I publish a lot of content about all those things. I do extreme virtual networking marathons every so often where people can just book time on my calendar. I'm always monitoring my DMs. That is the best place. Like all the types of relationships that you may want to have with me, that's where they intersect in a meaningful way. So everyone is welcome to send me a shout out or reach out, send me a DM. I'd love to talk.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. It's one of the few social media platforms I actually like. And so with that, I definitely encourage people to reach out. And now, if you, as a listener, have your own journey to share and you'd like to share it on the podcast as well, feel free to reach out to us and go to inventiveguest.com. We'd love to have you on the show and share your journey. A couple more things as listeners: make sure to click share, subscribe, and leave us a review. So we want to make sure that everyone finds out about all these awesome journeys. And last but not least, if you ever need help with your patents, your trademarks, or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, Nicole. Now, but not tongue tied. Thank you again, Nicole, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you. Bye.